Hey guys, it's a beautiful but a little bit wet day here in Austin, Texas, and we're looking at the 4th generation of the RadCity. This is the high step version of the bike. They do make 2 step-through versions. Actually, it's the same bike, but it comes in white or black, which is not the case for the high step. You're only going to be able to get black, which I guess it kind of makes sense. They've narrowed things down a little bit. They used to offer this in 16 and 19-inch frame styles. Now they only offer 18.5. And I've measured all those dimensions back at the website for you, so you can get the standover height, minimum saddle height, and everything. And I'm going to tell you, this saddle goes a little bit lower. These handlebars are a little bit narrower. The balance on this one, you'll notice the battery is very low. It's a little bit further back, where it's sort of down and forward on this one. And they do have bottle cage bosses, but they put them way down here. That's probably the only place it would fit. So you could use those for a folding lock or mini pump or water, but you're just going to have to reach way down there. So I might get one of those like handlebar cup holders, or maybe one of those trunk bags with a little holster in the back instead. It does come with the rack in addition to these plastic fenders. And the fenders have this rubber, kind of a mud flap, so if you are pedaling or turning really sharp and you kick it, it's not going to get cracked. And they're surprisingly quiet. Like, I've done some off-roading actually with this white one. You can see the mud stuck in there on the checkerboard tires here. I've had a lot of fun with it. It's a relatively quiet bike, in part because they're using this gearless direct drive hub motor from Xingyi. They've been using this for a while now, and I actually talked to one of the founders of the company, Mike, and I was like, why are you guys using that? It's heavier. They have the sort of the high torque geared hub motors on their Rad Rover and the Rad Mini models. They're kind of off-road oriented. They're a little bit noisier, but they weigh like 8.7 pounds, where this is like 10.4 pounds for this motor. And it's 750 watts, but it only offers 41 newton meters of torque versus 80. So I was like, well, how come? And he's like, these are super reliable. It's not like gears on each other, which isn't necessarily a bad thing to help you climb and give you torque, but it makes some noise. You know, it produces a little bit more noise. There's more friction happening. This is quiet. It's really reliable, and it offers a little bit of regenerative braking, which is kind of cool. So as you're stopping and you pull those brake levers, it sends a signal to cut power to the motor, and on these bikes it actually starts to slow you down a little bit extra by repelling the stators against the rare earth magnets inside the motor. Now, the thing about regenerative braking is it doesn't give you a whole lot of energy back. You know, it's some of that's lost in transmission and heat and everything. Got to go back into this battery pack here. And again, there's a little bit of weight here, but what it does do is it reduces the wear on your brake pads, for one thing, and maybe it helps you get a little extra juice to run these lights or something. I mean, it's not a bad thing. I think a lot of it's just for reliability. And you'll see how narrow this motor is compared to the fat bike specific planetary geared hub motors on the other bikes. So, you know, more power to them. Makes sense. They've got it here on the RadCities as well as the Rad Wagon, and it makes for a really smooth and fluid, kind of a quiet, relaxing cruiser sort of a ride, which I appreciate. You can see they've done a lot here, even though they only have one size, to give you a lot of flexibility in comfort on this bike. They've got this adjustable angle stem, and it's in like the full upright position right now, which brings the handlebars back, gives you this upright, relaxed body position that's good for your neck and back. If you have like arm sensitivity, shoulder sensitivity like I do, this is a nice setup. Ergonomic rubber grips. They're not locking. They're not super fancy, but they are from Bello. They get the job done. And then these 4-finger brake levers, which also have a rubberized edge, which keeps your hands from getting too cold. And it's also a little bit more comfortable. They're 4-finger brake levers because you do have to pull a little bit harder. These are mechanical disc brakes, but they do have large 180 millimeter disc brake rotors. So that's great. It gives you a mechanical advantage over these. You know, they're sizable. They're not the biggest wheels in the world, but they are a little bit higher volume. These are 26 by 2.3 inches, and they've got that checkerboard pattern, which looks pretty good, and it kind of gives you the go anywhere versatility. If you come down here and look a little bit closer, you can see it says K-Rad. So these are co-branded. It says Rad Power Bikes by Kenda. Kenda is the manufacturer, and they've got this puncture-resistant tire casing in addition to a reflective sidewall stripe, which I love, especially since this one only comes in black. And white's going to stand out a little bit more, but again, that only comes in a 16, they say, frame size. I measured it more like 14.25 when you actually do the seat tube measurements. But the point being, if you're a larger rider, if you're looking for a sportier, stiffer feel, you got to go with black. So thank goodness they're giving you some extra some extra support with the lights and everything. They've got a little friendly signal bell built right in. They've got a suspension fork on this. This is just a spring fork. It's nothing too special, SR Sun Tour, but it does have quick release down here, which is nice. And they've got a compression adjust, so we're all the way open here, but you could lock it out if you're a heavier rider and you're just on smooth stuff and you feel like the tires already give you enough comfort. And that's going to keep you from bobbing, which it's not, I guess, you know, kind of wastes a little bit of your efficiency, so it's going to sap your range just a bit, and it might also just be a little bit disorienting if you're trying to hold the handlebars and brake and shift. So that's something that a lot of people do. I always leave them unlocked because I'm relatively lightweight and I want comfort. And then there's preload adjust, so you can preload that spring so you're not losing a bit of travel just based on your body weight. And it's not just your body weight. This is up to 275 pounds, right, is how they rate these bikes. It's not just you. It could be a front rack. And they have these awesome accessories that give you a lot of storage capacity. There's like a tray. There's like an insulated bag. Back here, you can see there's a standard gauge pannier hanger, and they've got bungee looped here, so you could use a bungee cord. That's the cheap solution. And then they've got this thicker tubing, and that's where their panniers connect directly to that. There's a YEP compatible child seat window right here. The same interface for adding like the trays. So many options. This thing can really become a workhorse for you, and that's back to having an adjustable suspension fork. Really appreciate that. Coming back to comfort though, you might say, okay, well, I've locked that out, but now I'm less comfortable. You get yourself a suspension seat post. They sell those optionally as well. This is 27.2 millimeters. You can get one yourself aftermarket, or you can kind of have it set up. They've got this Rad mobile service where they deliver the bike if you buy it in one of these major cities. It's starting out in Austin, Seattle, Vancouver, and Sacramento. And I think that's pretty cool because, you know, as nice as these new boxes are and everything, and they're pretty wide, there's still a lot of kind of messing around. And if you don't have a bike rack and you want to get this thing set up right, it's so cool that they're doing it. It's $149. I wanted to call out their newest model here. This is the Step-Thru Rad Rover, and you can see it's a fairly sizable bike. It weighs like 70 pounds. So having this kind of service at your disposal really sets them apart from some of the other like online direct e-bike brands. They also do warranty service with this too, so it's not just your first purchase. I think that's awesome. There's a lot to be said about these bikes, and you know, this battery weighs about 7.7 pounds. You could take that off the frame and you could hang it on a car rack, and then you could charge the battery separately away from the extreme heat and extreme cold. That's my advice. They use higher quality Samsung 3500 milliamp cells, but it's still, the extreme heat's gonna kind of reduce the number of full charge cycles you can get. And again, the weight thing. So there's a lot of things going through my mind with this bike. It's like, okay, if I had racks, am I parking it at work? Do I want to charge during the day? Do I want to keep that battery out of the hot garage? Lots of really good options. And one thing they've done is separate the battery from the controller, which doesn't look too bad on the black bike. On the white bike, you notice it a little bit more. It's fairly well protected, at least. And the point being, it makes the replacement batteries a little bit more affordable. So that's a positive way to look at that. And anyway, with the battery packs, maybe you get an extra one, you put it in a bag or something like that. I want to call out that Domino's has been using these electric bikes for delivery in big cities. I've actually seen them riding around Seattle, which is pretty cool. Like, what a great way to cut down on traffic congestion and parking fees and stuff. And then also just give your employees a little bit of fun and some exercise. I just think it's really cool, and it's a testament to the quality and the reliability of these bikes, and also the affordability, because at some point, back to like the cheaper batteries and the parts and stuff, they're all fairly modular. You'll notice quick disconnects. This one is sealed. That's the one that goes to the display unit right there, so it's a little bit more water resistant. Everything on this bike is highly water resistant. That's what they say, and I've been testing it, but I welcome your feedback out there. Even the rear light, they've got a quick disconnect right there. So I feel like it's a testament to that reliability, affordability. $14.99 for these bikes, comes with a 1-year comprehensive warranty. And again, this is the 4th generation of this bike, so I feel like they've worked out a lot of little details. It's kind of a show and tell. I mean, you know, yeah, you have to use a little bit of extra hand effort on these brakes because they're mechanical, not hydraulic. And, you know, sure, there's some of this stuff is external. I do like, though, that back to the racks and everything. Look at this. They've even got like a frame lock mount, so you could put on like a cafe lock if you're just scooting inside for a moment. You don't want to have a chain lock. It's just really good. Things like this. These are pretty sturdy aluminum alloy platform pedals from Welgo with these nice nubs that are going to give you good grip, good traction, especially in the rain. Adjustable length kickstand, so it's gonna stay out of the way here when you're pedaling, or if you're backing this out of a garage, you're not gonna get pedal lock. And when I kicked it up, I noticed that it does not get that close to that disc brake rotor, which is something I've noticed on some of the other bikes where it actually like hits the disc brake rotor and you hear it go like bong and it bends it, and then you get that scrapey noise. They've really dialed it in. We've got a steel derailleur guard back here, so if the bike tips over, or if you get it shipped and not assembled, maybe it's in the box and the box gets banged up or something like that. Rad Power Bikes is using kind of the standard threaded 12mm axle with flats, and that's biting into this aluminum alloy frame as well as this steel torque arm. So they've done a good job just kind of overbuilding this thing. Again, 41 Newton meters of torque off this motor, but by having a torque arm, you're not going to chew into your frame quite as much. It's a little thing, but I think it makes a difference over the long term. Silver 12 gauge spokes. For a minute I was like, well, they could go with black. That's what they did with all the mountain models. But then you look at the brake rotors and you look at the stanchions on the suspension fork, and the silver looks pretty good. It's pretty good stuff. The drivetrain on this bike is awesome, I think, for what it is. You get a 46 tooth steel chainring with a sandwich around it. There's alloy plates. That's a chain guide, and it doubles as a bash guard, so if you come into contact with a curb or a rock or a tree or something, it's not going to bang up your chainring. And then back here we've got Shimano Acera derailleur, 3 steps up from the base level in the group set. So you got Tourney, Altus, Acera. Good stuff. A little bit lighter, a little bit of a quality upgrade, so maybe it won't go out of true as much. I noticed they're using Jaguar here for their brake lines. These will settle in over time. I used to think like, oh, cable stretch, but I was talking to a mechanic actually at Rad Power Bikes, and he was like, well, technically it's these housings settle in a little bit, and so they get a little bit shorter. So what you can do here is turn this to the left a little bit, and it's going to stretch out this last housing, and that's one way you can dial this in without actually breaking out the tools and adjusting it. So it's kind of neat DIY tip for you. This is a DNP nickel-plated 11 to 34 tooth freewheel. It's not a cassette. Freewheels are a little bit cheaper, but to have that kind of range, a lot of times I'm seeing 14 to 28 tooth, so you don't get the low gear for climbing and starting and lumbering along if you've got that rack loaded up, and you don't have the high gear for hitting and maintaining the 20-mile-per-hour top speed that this bike supports. This is a Class 2 electric bike. Technically, I guess you could remove the throttle, turn it into a Class 1 if you wanted to ride it on some trails or something. Again, really easy to do right there with that quick disconnect. Whole lot of cables up here because both of those brake levers have motor inhibitors, send a signal to the controller to cut that motor out. They also send a signal to activate the brake lights. So I just turned the bike on, press the mode button for a second. If I hold up and mode, we get backlighting on the display. It's really awesome headlight, 80 lumens. It's got a focus beam that's actually pretty effective. You can see it there. It's kind of a blade. So they used to be a little bit broader. And then they've got this light ring, which is more visible from the side. In the past, that was blocked from the side. So that's gonna keep you a bit more visible. Same thing with the rear light. They got a little cutout there to help you be seen. And it's got like a blinking mode if you press that button on the bottom. That's pretty cool. And then as soon as you press either one of these brake levers, you get bright mode. So awesome, awesome stuff. Like, I don't know of hardly any other bikes, especially in this price range, that have like a brake light activation or the blinking mode. So I'm gonna turn this back to solid. I know it looks like it's blinking. That's because of interference with my frames per second on my camera capture rate. So yeah, there's even a little handle down here for lifting the bike and stuff. Coming back to the display, they've got a little full-size USB Type A 1 amp charging port on the base, and it's pretty sweet. Sometimes I have trouble getting the rubber thing to seat right, but yeah, that'd be cool. They'd sell like an optional phone mount so you could charge your phone while you're going. The battery pack is 48 volts. It offers 14 amp hours, so 672 watt hours of capacity on this pack, and that's a lot. That will really take you, I'm estimating like kind of 30 to 50 miles depending on what level of assist. One of the really cool things about the Rad Power Bike battery system is that they use the same pack for all their models, even in Europe. So, you know, we got a little 4 LED charge level indicator right there. This nice kind of, you know, semi-aerodynamic shape. It slides on like this, it mounts and then slides down. And depending on which frame we're talking about, like if it's the Rad Minis, you might have to raise the seat and turn it or take it off. So getting the battery on and off on some models is a little easier, like the Rad Rover. On others, takes a little bit more time. Here's the charging port on the right hand side. It's got a little rubber cover that's fairly easy to use. Sometimes those aren't so easy to use on other bikes. They don't seat very well. Oh yeah, you know, 48 volt, 14 amp hour, 672 watt hours. These weigh about, you know, 7.6, 7.7 pounds. They do have 2 fuses right there, which is nice. I don't have an IP rating, ingress protection rating, but they say they're highly water resistant, just like the motor and the display. So they say you can ride these bikes around in rain and in wet conditions. You're definitely not supposed to submerge them or anything, but it's nice that they warranty them for that 1-year comprehensive, and that the battery pack replacements are a little more affordable because the controller unit is separate. And then another unique quality about these batteries is that the locking mechanism has 3 different slots. So right now you could slide it onto the bike because that pin is not protruding, and then once it's on, you could kind of push and turn, and it'll lock to the frame, and you can remove the key, and in this mode it's off, so no one can tamper with your display, which is kind of cool. No one's going to be able to use the throttle or anything. And then you take it to that next step, right, still locked, and now take the key out, the bike will work. So it's really cool for people who don't want to take this off their bike but don't want people tampering. You can kind of lock it and turn the bike off. I think that's really nice, and there are a lot of other bikes that don't do that, so good job, Rad. This is a more efficient motor, but again, it's a little heavier. You do have a little bit of cogging drag, so if you're riding and you completely turn the bike off, expect there to be just a little bit of drag. In fact, I might try to show you that. Tip the bike up like this, spin the wheel, and see how it coasts to a stop a little bit faster than you'd expect. That's because there's some magnetic drag happening inside there. Okay, so back up here to the display panel. You can adjust the angle if you're getting some glare like we are right now. There we go. Helps out a little bit. We've got 5 ticks on that battery infographic. Odometer, press the mode button here, it goes to trip distance. Speed, it's current speed right now, but if I hold the up arrow, we go to average speed, and then max speed, which is cool. 2 miles per hour, max speed, love it. Whoops, pressed the wrong button. Okay, now we're back to current speed. Uh-oh, no, I turned it off. Oh gosh, turn it back on. Starts off in pedal assist level 1 at all times, which is, it means that the throttle is hot. The throttle actually works in all levels of assist, even 0. So I consider this to be a kind of an advanced setup. It's usually a good idea to be on the bike before you turn it on and start messing around with the settings. Let's see here. So you can take it to 0, and in that case you just have access to the lights and this display and the USB port, which is still nice. Take it all the way up to level 5. Speed, that's where you're going to get your 750 watts, and you'll know how many watts are flowing by that readout down there. I mentioned holding up in mode to activate the lights. You can hold the down button as long as you're any of those 1 through 5 assist levels, and you get walk mode, which could be very useful if you've got like a kid on a child seat, or you're just loaded up with the racks and maybe you're walking up a hill and it's wet and you just feel like you want to be a little extra conservative. And then here's some secrets. If you hold the up and down arrows, we can get into the settings. So setting 1 is wheel size, or 26 inches, that's correct. Setting 2 is speed, so you can actually lower the speed down to 12 kilometers per hour. Let's say you want to just be a little bit safer, you know, go slower, maximize your range. It's nice that you can do that. And then setting 3 is backlight brightness, so we're at 1 right now, 2, or 3. I like it at 3. So setting 4 is miles per hour versus kilometers per hour. And then we looped around. I'm just gonna hold the mode button here to exit. Let's double check the battery charge level. Yeah, okay, we're full. And I've gotta say, I like how they've got like kind of a cutout on the frame, so it's a little bit of a more secure surface for the battery mount. In fact, I wanna do a little, yeah, see, they've got 3 bolts on the battery interface, so it's nicer than just like a lot of the kits and stuff. Sure, it's not an integrated battery, but that's part of what makes it so modular, which is nice, makes it a little bit more affordable. So here we go. The motor is super quiet. Hopefully you can hear it. Fairly stable riding position. Shift some gears. Still feeling good. I like to do that test because sometimes there are bikes that have speed wobble. The battery position on this one's good, and I also did not have speed wobble on the Step-Thru, so that's good. I might take it down a little bit. Let you listen to just how quiet the bike is. Take it all the way up to 20. There we are. downtown Austin. Okay guys, I got you pointed down at that 46 tooth chainring. We got the alloy bash guard guide, really like that. Standard 170 millimeter crank arm, so it's got a comfortable pedal cadence. And then there's the 12 magnet, like it's kind of exposed. That was one of the things I've noticed on the Rad Runner. They have it on the left side and it's a little cadence sensor that's more internal. But this is very high resolution. It works really good. Just over time, you can see the bike's getting a little wet and muddy because I'm going off-road with it. That's an area to be aware of. Like if it got caked in mud or something and you're noticing that pedal assist wasn't working quite right, you could rinse this off. Don't spray the bike like hard with water, but my understanding is you can just kind of hose it down and use some of the environmentally friendly spray stuff and like a rag. I love that it's got a slap guard because that's going to keep things quiet. When I go off-road, I tend to shift into the lowest gear, which is that 34 tooth sprocket back here, or cog, and that stretches the chain out so it's not bouncing as much. We got the Acera derailleur, 11 to 34 teeth, 7 speeds, and then the big thumb shifter. So I'm going to shift through. I'm going to probably ride in assist level 5, even though that's overkill for what we're doing. I have done some climbing, and it works okay. I mean, it does, especially if you pedal a little bit and you're in a low gear, but with a little bit of momentum, this thing climbs fine. So here we go. I'm going to do some braking here a little bit smoother than that, so maybe you can hear the engine or the motor engage in that regen effect. It's pretty cool. Cool. And now I'm going to do some off-roading so you can hear the fenders and just the chain and everything, get an idea what this would be like. The throttle completely open going across the grass back there, and I was at around 13 miles per hour, so that's your force power on this thing. And now I'll probably do a top speed test just on the concrete. There we go. I got it up to 21 miles per hour. And then there's the drag, introduces a little bit of drag. It's kind of noticeable. It's nice to think that I'm putting energy back in the battery pack, but for people who want to go really fast, that's one of the trade-offs with a gearless direct drive motor. Okay, I'm gonna put the suspension to work, do a little bit of off-road riding, and you can also get some of the splashback and see how those fenders perform. I do have it completely open. I'm gonna be in assist level 5. Of course, and they've got the new throttle design up here. It's interesting. It doesn't have the on-off button like they used to have, and it interfaces really seamlessly with the grip. It feels really comfortable. So for that off-road riding where you don't want extra things like banging into your knuckles and stuff, I feel like it's a pretty good design. If I slow down like that, it takes a second for, the climbing power of this motor is definitely less than the geared ones on the fat bikes, but with a little bit of momentum, it's still fairly capable. Okay guys, I've asked my buddy Eric to do some filming so you can see this thing third person. Here you go, buddy.
All
right, thank you. Let's see here. Just gonna juice it. I'm in the highest level of assist. Pretty good. Not a whole lot of squeaking going on, which is pretty surprising given that it's fairly wet out today. This is definitely like, this is the sportier one, you know, the frame is really stiff. It's pretty quiet. Even when I was going off-road, I'm trying not to make a huge mess, you know, with the mud and stuff, but it's been working great. Guys, I think that's about it. Thank you so much for joining me on this little adventure around Austin. That's the Rad Power Bikes RadCity. It's cool that they offer the step-through, the high step. I think they're doing a really good job, but I welcome your feedback. Got all the measurements and stuff back at the site, so if you want to compare the different models, there's even a cool comparison tool. So I hope this helps you. Love you guys. Ride safe. We'll see you on the next one.